ADHD is not a disorder. You've heard me say that many times. It's a difference in brain wiring. Many successful people have ADHD, and we talk to a lot of people on this podcast. And today I have one of them here. Blake Eastman is the founder of Nonverbal Group. He teaches people and machines to read human behavior and helps people navigate the complexity of social interactions in the workplace. Blake, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
You want to give a quick background of your story? Because I think you told me once that you're a professional poker player and you're kind of transformed into reading human behavior.
Yeah, my background really was two things. So I was a psychology professor and a poker player, and kind of got the entrepreneurial bug and left what was going to be an academic pursuit and focused on building companies. So one of the first ones was the Nonverbal Group, which really looks at the complexity of human behavior at a high level of precision and detail. So there's a lot of like real basic body language stuff out there, or basic communication advice that I don't think does justice to the massive amounts of complexities that are involved in social interactions. So we just look at things with a higher level of focus or complexity.
That's really cool. Because the one thing that we met in Mexico at a mastermind, the Optimized Group with Nick Sonnenberg, and one of the presentations you did was about how to do really good presentations, and your knowledge of social behaviors with these nonverbal cues is really interesting. But today, we've had a chat ever since that event a couple times, and it came about. You said that you also have an ADHD brain, and based on your history and what I learned from you in Mexico, I thought it'd be great for you to share your story, and show that it's not a disorder. It's just a different brain wiring, and like, let's start it off. What did you think was one of your biggest ADHD challenges or obstacles
Yeah,
starting your way?
so I've never wanted to officially give myself the label of ADHD, but if I look at like any of the diagnostic criteria, it's like, oh wow, that's totally me. And it was a problem. I think the first thing that I noticed was a problem was test taking when I was a kid.
Mhm.
So like I would look at a multiple choice question and my brain would like fly into a thousand different directions. Like, well, it could be this, it could be this. I didn't like really know how to take tests.
Mhm.
And then my wife commonly refers to me as like pinball head. So like I'll be in a conversation with someone and then all of a sudden like the amount of thoughts that rush through my head is quite absurd. Um, and struggled with focus for a very long time. Was a chronic procrastinator and just couldn't sit down and do work. And it was one of the things that I think if I looked at myself when I was like 21 versus now, 21-year-old self would be like, wow, like you've really worked on this. And I still struggle with this. There are certain things that exasperate that. So for
Yeah.
example, one of the biggest ones is sleep. If
Hmm.
if I don't get a good night of sleep, and I have a mild form of sleep apnea, so if I'm not well rested, it's not good. Like I could almost predict, like if I sleep 6.5 hours or 7 hours even and not get my eight, writing is going to be extremely hard for me in that day because I'm just going to not have it's hard for me to focus. So there's just a lot of lifestyle things that I've been able to get under wraps, and then just being more sensitive with my timing around certain drugs like caffeine and
Yeah.
nicotine and all these various types of things. But I really believe that I personally don't love the label ADHD. I think it's just such a like, what are we actually referring to, right? Like
Yeah.
there's ADHD with hyperactivity, without hyperactivity. Like there's all of these things. And I think a lot of the time when you give yourself this gross label, you don't know the path sort of forward. And I think sometimes I was also just like lazy and would not want to focus.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
used the excuse of not focusing. But um, very happy for the way my brain works and how I'm wired. I wouldn't change a thing.
Yeah, like for
But
me, like I understand what you're
yeah,
saying about the label, but people focus too much on what the words mean or what it can, how it's interpreted. It can be limiting, and
yeah, extremely
you've
limiting.
switched that, right?
Yeah, so I think thanks to my mom, like I think earlier on, like somebody was like, "Oh, your kid has ADHD," and my mom was very like, no, he doesn't. Like he's fine. Like he's just smart, you know? Like it
Yeah,
was,
yeah.
so she supported that. And she, I very, in another household, I could have easily been put on drugs or medication at a younger age for sure. And I don't think I would have learned the skills that I've learned over the years.
Well, let's go a little more about that. What do you mean by that?
Like if I was in school and maybe saw a psychologist and explained my individual challenges, they might have viewed me through the lens of ADHD and been like, "Oh, well, you need to be on, something, Ritalin or
Yeah.
whatever it is." And there was times where I was tempted because
Hmm.
I had friends around me that were explaining how much these drugs were focused, and I really just didn't want to go down that route. I wanted to know that I could focus and do what I needed to do. And I don't know what those paths look like. Like maybe I would still be on medication today. Maybe I'd be more effective or not effective. I don't know. But at the end of the day, I'm glad that I worked through it.
So you create your own systems and sorry, your systems and routines around that, probably without realizing it. And it, if I'm hearing you correctly, so if you would have maybe been treated or had medication, you might not be where you are now, or develop certain skills that you've created to overcome those quote unquote symptoms.
Yeah, I might have lacked the self-awareness. I might have been like, oh, I need to up my amount of meds. And
Yeah.
I wouldn't know about how much sleep impacts me. And I wouldn't know how much like certain things like physical activity really help me. And all these types I would just not have had that awareness. And I'm grateful that I do.
And do you think it's also part of how you've become the entrepreneur or how you got into this field or got that curiosity?
Oh yeah, I mean like it's a very curious brain, I would say.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And bouncing around and then like, there are times where I can have hyper almost obsessive focus with something for long periods of time and then there's other times where there's a simple task that I'm just like I can't do. And one of the greatest value about being an entrepreneur is you get to sort of craft your own destiny and
Yeah,
craft your own working style. So the things that I can't do, I have people on my team do, or
right.
the things that I find boring, I just don't do. Where if I was in a traditional job, it doesn't work like that.
Do you think that ability to hyper focus help you as a professional poker player?
Yeah, it's actually funny. A lot of professional poker players seem to have ADHD. And one of the things that I've noticed is that so my brain, it sort of craves complexity. I like it.
Yeah.
So in things that are complex and difficult, I lock in because the complexity is almost like soothing to me, if that makes sense.
Oh, clear. Yeah, I
But
understand what you're saying.
but if it's not, it's very hard.
You're out. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm like out or I make an excuse on why I can't do it and all of that. And being an entrepreneur earlier on, unfortunately, there's a lot of things that you just have to do that you don't necessarily want to do. So I think I learned a lot of skills from that process.
I don't think we're saying that people with ADHD are all poker players or all entrepreneurs. It's just
Yeah. There's
the way
probably a
your brain
commonality. Like
yeah,
if you looked at the distribution of ADHD, let's say ADHD, let's say traits of ADHD in entrepreneurs,
yeah,
I think what you'd find is, oh wow, like a ton of
yeah,
them have it, you know?
yeah. I just want to like the other thing is when I hear you talk about the poker and the entrepreneurship is I don't know if you ever heard of the concept of ADHD brains have an interest-based nervous system versus
Hmm.
importance-based.
Yeah.
So you're very interested in poker and to learn the complexities of it. I enjoy it, but I get bored, so I lose my interest. So just trying to say like it's even entrepreneurship, it's not for everyone, even if you're an ADHD brain or not.
Oh yeah,
So
definitely.
um what has been your biggest entrepreneurial success to date?
Um, wow. I mean, I think it boils probably back down to my lifestyle,
Hmm.
in the sense that, I could look at money and I could look at like certain accolades, but they're important, but they're not as important to me as right now. I really do control my calendar and I really do control my life. And for the most part, I mean, I used to work from 7 a.m. to 1 a.m. every
Yeah.
single day, and now a lot of days I'm done with the work that had to have get done between the hours of 9 and 12. So I've become very good at hyper focusing on what I need to do. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs may make good money or they might like what they do, but they're overwhelmed by what they do and they don't have a life outside of what they do.
Yeah.
So I think I found, I think I found really good balance of making a good amount of money, enjoying my days, enjoying the way I get to structure my calendar. And I think that's a freedom that most entrepreneurs don't have.
And don't quite understand because we were raised to say work your ass off, and the harder you work, the more successful you are, the more
Yeah,
successful you
exactly.
look. And what I was hearing from you is you brought it down from a 16-hour day down to like 3 or 4. My dyscalculia's not working, so I can't do that too quickly in my head. But for you to do that, you've got people on your team to do all the other shit you don't enjoy doing or not good at. Is that
Yeah,
correct? Yeah.
I got people on my team, and I've also got a lot of just we're heavily invested in supplementing workflows with AI. So a lot of things I do get done in the background by
Hmm.
machines that other people manage.
Nice. Um, Even though you don't label yourself as ADHD or whatnot, or you didn't want to, what is your ADHD strength that was key to your success, do you think?
The I call it spidering.
Ooh.
So basically, like my brain, the way it works is like if I look at a problem, I very rarely see the problem. I see like multiple problems, multiple levels of problems.
Yeah.
And as a business owner, that's been like really incredible in the sense that like if I look at a website, my brain fires like hundreds of thoughts and just boom, 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 boom. And it's allowed me to create just higher quality products, higher quality experiences. Because I'm not linear, it's made me slower, but at the end of the day, it results in just much better products.
What do you mean by slower?
So, like, if I were to, I think if you take that part out of me, I
Mhm.
probably reach a product or an endpoint quicker, but the
Uh,
endpoint, it's not as good as it would be if I jumped around in a bunch of different directions.
so it's kind of like timing or delivery time.
Hmm. Yeah.
Can I challenge you if it would have been anyone else, would it take them longer to get to the same solution
Yeah. Much longer or never get to
or
the same
never?
solution.
I see
Yeah.
the same thing. Like the one thing I noticed is what I could, you know, I just kind of raises my mindset for a while was I had to put equal amount of time as anyone else on my team, but I realized 2, 3 hours of me working with the engineering work or anything else was the equivalent almost an 8 hour day for most people, and they're working at a good pace. So the way I find like a lot of us, especially the high achievers, we seem to have this ability to having problem solving abilities going quicker, finding complex solutions to complex problems quicker, but our delivery at times is
Hmm.
delayed because I think of our interest-based nervous system. Is it like for me when I get to a stage of a project where I really don't want to do or don't feel like a final report, then I'll delay that for a while. I don't know if that
Yeah.
makes sense.
No, it makes total sense. Yeah.
Um, what advice would you have for an entrepreneur that's just a few years into it? They're caught in the trap of the habit. I'll say that I think it's a bad habit we got into, having to work all ends of the day and all hours of the week. What would you give a recommendation to a new entrepreneur trying to make
I
it big?
I really believe in coaching because you can't see your own blind spots.
Hmm.
So like you just can't, you don't know what you don't know. And a lot of the time you'll think it's the only way and you sometimes need somebody else to show you that there's a different way. Uh, so whether it's coaching, whether it's small groups, but just having feedback loops that exist outside of yourself and having other people that can support you in the right direction.
Makes a lot of sense to me, actually. Well, me, I've been coached for many, many years, but the way you just said it made me put two things together. So instead of having it in your head, try to figure it out yourself, being in the head, the ADHD brain has a hard time processing that information to concrete till it comes out and comes back in.
Hmm.
So with the coaching process, you get that as well. You get feedback from what was in your head to out in a new form, and we can get to solutions quicker. But everyone says that costs money. What's the return on investment when you're bootstrapped at the beginning stages?
Yeah, it's like if you don't spend the money one way, you'll spend it somewhere else, right? So it's like, yeah, people are like, oh, I don't have any money, I don't have money. But it's like, all right, if somebody can help you get something done and more effectively in 3 months, and it was going to take you 12 months, it's going to be, you're going to spend way more money. So
Correct.
it's sort of overcoming that scarcity mindset of, and finding a way to create the path that's the most effective.
I think it also has to overcome the ego of I can do this by myself. I don't need
Hmm.
anyone.
Yeah, that was my probably biggest problem from like 20 to 30. It's like I don't need anybody. I do it myself. Blah 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 blah. But you just can't.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool. Um, one last word of advice to the listeners.
I mean, I really would say if you struggle with some of the things that we are talking about, I'd really start at foundational things related to lifestyle. So sleep, the foods you put in your body, like you can't sometimes your gifts are not becoming gifts because of the lifestyle you have. Like, so
Right.
for me, I know that I just can't have certain foods. They just really just don't work well for me. Like for me, the best way is to eat like all whole foods, and that just calms me down. For me, if I eat all whole foods, if I work out, like almost I work out every day, and if I sleep's number one for me. If
Hmm.
I do those things and I set myself up around those things, I'm using the aspects of me that could potentially be problems as massive strengths.
Yeah.
So I would have you explore that.
Yeah. I really like the fact lifestyle changes, sleep, food. And like you said earlier, it's actually a measure of success versus the amount of money you're making, which I thought
Yeah.
was a nice, subtle change. Coaching is definitely key to growth, gets all that thinking and processing out of your head. For me, I had to get my ego out of the way. And if you got a scarcity mindset, then it's going to be an expense rather than an investment. And and the whole concept of spidering, I really like that
Hmm.
visualization, crawling through. I kind of said it's crawling through a problem with other problems and identifying that. So
Yeah.
that's really cool. And for you, the listener, what I want you to take away here is lifestyle changes is a measure of success and is required if you want to do long-term success. And I hate saying managing our ADHD symptoms. Like I think their strengths is just if they're not managed, they become weaknesses, and that's what we got to do. And I think you're one of the first people, Blake, that talked about the lifestyle is kind of more important than the other measurements that's traditional out there for an entrepreneurial success.
Perfect. Thank you
Um,
so much. This
yeah,
is great.
where can people find you?
Uh, nonverbalgroup.com. I have a newsletter. Check that out. And then also on Instagram, I've been posting a lot, and Blake_Eastman.
Cool. And you listener, thanks again for learning with me, and we'll talk to you soon. Take care.